Good morning, everybody. My name is Ewan Leach. I'm the Chief Executive of SURF, and welcome to the first of our shared learning workshops. And today's one is on youth employability. Some basic Zoom housekeeping. If you keep yourself on mute just now, that would be good. The event is being recorded so that we can share the presentations and the discussion with people afterwards. We're an intimate group today. It's July. A lot of people are on holiday, but none of us are because we are working hard. So thank you for joining us this morning. As you will no doubt all be aware, a SURF Award is not just the end of a project. It's not just to celebrate it and say, isn't that good, well done. It's the purpose of the awards is so that we can maximize the learning from the projects, not just the award winners, but those that apply and those that are commended by the judges. And today's event is specifically looking at projects that are designed to overcome barriers to employment for young people. And so today we have four speakers. We could say 3.5. We have Kirsty Stephen from Street League, John Connell from Move On, and then when I say half, I'm saying half because we have a recorded input from the Community Renewal Trust, from John Halliday, who are unable to join us this morning, and Elaine Walls from Skills Development Scotland, talking about their national overview and what they have to offer around employability, which will no doubt be of interest to us all. So rather than hearing just from me, I think what we will do is we'll have 3 presentations from Kirsty, John and John Halliday's video, and then we'll have some time for a Q&A after that. So I will now introduce Kirsty Stephen from the Street League to tell us the work that Street League do and what their experience has been over the, I suppose, the past year. And I suppose on quick reflection upon what happened with the awards last year, obviously it was a bit different because the awards were virtual. And I think the awards also reflected the fact that lockdown had impacted on all organisations. And I think what we'll be hearing this morning is the impact that it had on people's work, their outcomes, and how they've had to shift to what we're currently doing is a new temporary-ish way of working. But over to you, Kirsty.
Thank you. I'll just share my screen. Is that okay? Can everyone see that?
We can indeed.
Yeah, okay, great. So yeah, just as Ewan said there, we are presenting about successful methods of supporting young people to overcome barriers to employment. And yeah, during what was a difficult but interesting year. And for those that aren't familiar with Street League or myself, I'm Kirsty Stephen, Head of Operations. Street League are an employability organisation who use sport to engage young people. If you're thinking how did we do that during lockdown, I'll take you through that in our presentation. But yeah, very much an emphasis on what we did do last year and how we made sure that all young people who needed support had it in some shape or form during a very unpredictable year. So just as a recap, last year 1,151 young people received our support, 640 gained a qualification and 837 moved into an outcome. When lockdown was announced, as we've all said, it was quite sudden, and we had a live caseload. We had people all over Scotland engaging with us. So we had to, we say overnight loosely, but it was almost overnight. We had to think of a offer and a response, and it was that Head Body Future was born, tackling the 3 areas that we were worried most about for young people and their state of mind, where they would be at mentally, what were they going to do with their bodies, being active, being cooped up in a house, and being that age thinking, what are my prospects as a young person. So yeah, we did a Head Body Future, and that was our adaptation to what we do out in the front line, but on Zoom instead. So in terms of what we did differently, and when we're saying about successful methods, two huge priorities for us was to make sure that there was no barrier to engagement, that every young person that needed our support had it in some way, and we were able to get that to them. And then something that came very quickly on our radar, but was when you're working with people face to face, you are maybe a bit more tuned into the safeguarding flags that make you think about their well-being. And when you're looking at them through a Zoom link, those flags are maybe less. So our lens to be able to look out for the well-being were limited. So we really had to put time and resource into how we overcame that, as well as other challenges. I've got some here. So young people not having technology or Wi-Fi to engage with our programme. So we offered data bolt-ons and tablets to send to anyone who needed them. We had instances where internet got cut off, families weren't able to afford the internet to be able to log into the Zoom sessions, and we were able to, again, it was very, we were problem solving all the time in the early stages, but we ended up finding that this was working and making sure that we were in a position to be able to offer this. In terms of cost, we weren't paying for participant travel and bus passes to get there, so we were able to put that cost into digital engagement, which was a big help. Not seeing young people face to face, so as I said earlier, so we implemented a wellbeing log. So managers were required to submit it to myself every week with anything at all that was maybe a concern or something, whether giving a young person a tablet, or even at one point offering welfare vouchers to young people who were saying that they were experiencing hardship. Sport sessions being moved online, so as I said at the start, but moving our service, which is generally on in community sport hubs, leisure centres, and taking it online was a real challenge, but our coaches were incredible and made workout sessions using household objects, so tins of soup, pints of milk. We also wanted to make sure that that wasn't a barrier to engagement, so using like weights and things that we knew that young people wouldn't have at home, so trying to make it as inviting as possible. Our coaches would then record their sessions and then we could share them across the Scottish teams, which kept things refreshing and kept it engaging for like all the Scottish teams. Suitable IT connectivity for all our staff. So even though our young people didn't have necessarily, like, we probably fell short as an organisation with the laptops that our staff were using. So we had to do an overhaul in terms of making sure our staff had phones and laptops that were fit for the amount of online engagement that we needed to do. As well as things like, getting a Zoom account and making sure that everyone had a login so people weren't getting cut off after 45 minutes. Digital online fatigue. So, going back to what Streetleague does, like, we're a sport organisation, we're out, we're in the fresh air, we're active. So going into houses, not really being allowed to leave that, we were trying to think of ways that we can keep our staff as well as our young people engaged. So getting the Strava app on our tablets and phones and all joining into the one challenge, tracking each other's performance, team goals. We recognised that staff burnout was quicker, staff had children, and to be honest, it was just about making sure that our staff knew that they were able to look after anyone at home that they needed to look after. They could be a parent, they just needed to keep their own well-being at the forefront as well. So yeah, big challenges to overcome, but we got there. In terms of significant successes, so we had 837 people move into a positive destination, 475 training, 136 college and 212 jobs. In terms of the training, that's much higher than we would have ever probably supported people into training. However, we made a strategic decision at the start of lockdown to make sure that basically a young person was always getting support, and however long this pandemic was going to go on for. So we were really keeping tight with our partners to make sure that there was another stage 3 provision available, or there was another stage 4 provision available, and just making sure that the young people every morning had something to get up for, because we were conscious of our programme was 10 weeks long. You know, after that 10 weeks and a job, or, you know, obviously the college open twice, but we wanted to make sure that they just always had a purpose and something. So that's where that's why that training number was higher than previously. Staff resilience, staff were tremendous. They were so keen and eager to be there for our young people. We're laughing now because we can't keep them indoors anymore and they're all socialising, so we're trying to make sure that our COVID measures in the office are tip top. But they were brilliant and couldn't have asked any more, and it's definitely down to the staff that we were able to have the performance that we had and the support for young people. Another significant success is the future online qualification delivery. So it did make us realise that our SQA qualifications, which were historically done on paper, was actually a bit outdated, and it's made us invest in the proof positive framework, where we have tablets that even if you're meeting a young person face to face, we're using the tablet for the young person to complete their qualification. Everything gets uploaded online, and it's just so much better for the business. So it's made us realise that actually, even though our hands were forced last year, that it's definitely brought a positive long term. And finally, we're equipped for the future. As I said there, you know, we're maintaining a bit of a blended approach. So where we can get face to face with young people, we are, but we're not doing the 20 hours full time, groups of 16. Just, you know, we've got a, you know, spike at the minute in terms of cases. So we're definitely just maintaining this blended approach, and it feels like if, you know, there's another lockdown, and, you know, don't want to say that, but, you know, if there is, then we're ready for it. And, you know, the most important thing for us is making sure that engagement for young people is not a barrier, and that their safeguarding and well-being is paramount at all times. And that's it for me. It's just a quick overview, but any questions, just ask.
Thank you very much, Kirsty. That was a great overview, and excellent that you responded so fast to what the how the pandemic affected Street League. We'll hold any questions. I have written down some questions, some of which you began answering, but I'll come back to them. We'll hold any questions until we've heard from all three speakers. So I think our next speaker is John Connell from Move On. Kirsty, can you stop sharing your screen?
Yeah, I'm just...
Thank you. I think I've done it for you. I didn't know how to do it, but I've worked out now.
Thank you.
But John, do you want to? So John Connell is from Move On, and John, I'll allow you to introduce yourself and the organisation if you want to start sharing your screen.
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
We can hear you fine.
I'm pressing share here, but it's not sharing for some reason. Give it 2 seconds. Try again. There you go, that should be it. So can everybody see that okay?
Yes, it's started. Yep, it's worked.
Yeah, great. Hi everybody, my name's John Connell. I'm the operational manager here at Move On. I oversee volunteering at Fair Share and employability programs we run on this site. So kind of similar to Kirsty, obviously I'm going to give you a wee overview of what we've been doing over the last year and a wee bit further back as well. So I will just work my way through it. So I thought I would just give you a wee bit of history about Move On for anybody who doesn't know us. Move On was primarily set up to help people in the care sector and people affected by homelessness. But even at our inception, employability was always a big part of what we've done. but in 2015, we were awarded our first Employability Fund contract. That was the year I was employed by Move On. And year on year, we have basically learned from our mistakes and tried to develop, build on our successes and develop this project to try and work in different ways and make it more successful. So since 2015, we have supported over 200 young people through the Employability Fund project. The Employability Fund project is kind of a small part of what we do and Move On as a whole. So we do lots and lots of different things, and we have a kind of dedicated small team for the Employability Fund, and we do other employability exercises as well, but I thought I would just concentrate on this. Right, so a kind of aim of our Employability Fund, in Glasgow we have a stage 2, stage 3 provision. And our stage 2 provision, as I'm sure a lot of you will know, is basically to break down the barriers that young people are facing. And the provision is particularly suitable for young people who would like to improve their employability skills and gain some work experience. Our stage 3 provision is for the young people a wee bit further along the pipeline, and that's more about gaining underpinning knowledge of the kind of warehouse sector, which is where we do our work experience. But we have realised that the kind of work experience we do gives them lots of skills that can be transferable into all different employment sectors. Right. So how it kind of works. So I know he might. So our Employability Fund project is aimed at 16 to 17-year-olds. I know that lad in the corner might look a lot older than that, but he is actually just turned 18. So our stage 2 programme is an 8-week programme. It's 3 days a week, it's training, and 2 weeks is work shadowing. And the stage 3 is a 12-week programme, 4 days a week, 2 weeks of classroom-based training, and 10 weeks of work experience. So the difference, you can see obviously the difference in the length of the programme and the difference in work shadowing and work experience. And the reason we call them two different things is for stage 2, our training staff will oversee our young people in the work experience, and basically what they're trying to do is basically just teach them the basics around timekeeping, attendance, work ethic, that kind of teamwork, and just building those skills with them. Whereas when they move on to stage 3, they're actually handed over to the Fair Share depot team, and that's when they're given a wee bit more responsibility, things like leading specific volunteering teams, overseeing specific areas and jobs. And basically what we expect when they go into stage 3 is for them to kind of show the skills that that we would then be happy to say that they're then job ready, or moving on to a stage 4 provision. So that's how it kind of works. What we find very good and very helpful with us is because we have our own in-house work experience. I don't know of any areas that have been down to Fair Share, and I will touch on that a wee bit more. What you may notice, unlike Kirsty, is I'm kind of just going, this is how we normally run a programme, and I'll give you the reason for that in a wee minute, and I'll speak about how the pandemic actually affected us. The kind of what we aim for young people to achieve during their stage 2 and stage 3 provision. So on the left hand side we've got the mandatory qualifications. Obviously we aim for every young person to achieve this, but obviously not every young person will. But I will say last year we had a 90% achievement rate on outputs. So 9 out of every 10 young people achieved every qualification on either stage 2 or the stage 3. On the right hand side, so this is when we need to assess them. So for anybody that does Employability Fund programmes, we will need to assess, do they need IT literacy, do they need a bit of health and safety awareness, and then we'll identify other training through their individual training plan. What you may see on there is mentoring and peer mentoring as well. So what we look with our stage 2s in particular is if they need that wee bit of extra support, we'll assign them to our mentoring service. And basically we'll have a kind of, so it's a kind of a befriended service, so they can actually kind of maybe get out of the house, build confidence, things like that. With the stage 3, again, it's about have they moved on. So we will actually then look to the young people for them to be peer mentors. So they'll be actually mentoring other young people. Again, it's totally dependent on the individual, and it's dependent on if they feel confident in both of the areas, if they want to get involved with that. So as well as just the classroom training and the work experience training, we offer a range of different extra support to all young people. So we have a dedicated literacy and numeracy team that would make an assessment during the induction process to look at basically the 2 main core skills around about literacy and numeracy. They'll then write up an individual learning plan, and they'll then one-to-one any young person that needs that extra support. We have a money debt advice team who will work with any young people who are obviously maybe struggling round about this area. The reason that we think that's quite important within our projects is what we've actually realised is for a lot of young people that are moving into employment, actually getting a wage can be very problematic for them. It then brings, I think the saying is more money, more problems, but it can actually cause them a lot of issues. So what we sit down and we talk about rent, we talk about even if, say, a parent or guardian's on benefits, how that would affect them, and it actually gives them a wee bit more support, because we are looking, it's not about obtaining a job, it's about sustaining employment as well. And as I say, we've got the mentoring project. We also work coaches, so each individual a development worker who is their work coach for the whole time they're with us, and that usually, as I said, it's an 8 to 12 week program, but we do have young people that will then continue to volunteer or continue to maybe work in a different program. So for however long that young person's with us, that person will have that work coach, unless that work coach moves on himself. We also work coaches from our external partners. So this is our corporate partners who will do things like job interview techniques and things like that with them. We've actually found that quite useful, that when you're doing kind of mock interviews with young people, it's okay when it's either myself or one of the other staff that's doing it with them, but we actually bring an external partner in from some of the big banks and from the big insurance companies in the city centre, that they get quite a lot out of it. And through the relationship we've built with these external partners, they basically agreed that they'll coach them all the way through for as long as the young person needs, even when they leave us, which is fantastic. It's a great opportunity that our partners are offering. And over the last year, we have become a trauma-informed training organisation. So all of our work and all of our paperwork, or everything that we kind of do, is what comes from a trauma-informed background. So it's took us a year to actually change every single bit of paperwork, every single bit of delivery work, even at all our inductions. And it's sometimes it's just changing a wee word here and a wee word there, but it's actually really good. And so a lot of young people will attend this training, they attend mental health awareness, they attend basically mental health first aid and things like that. So we found that especially helpful over the last year. Right, progressions. So as I said, all participants assigned a one-to-one worker. So suitable stage 2 candidates may be progressed into our stage 3 programme, but we only use that option when it's totally appropriate. When somebody's moving on to stage 3 programme from stage 2, it's generally that they've said that they're very much interested in the warehousing side of it, and that's maybe a career path they'd like to go down. If not, we generally kind of move them on to either a different training provider or college or employment. And over the year, we have built up really good relationships with colleges. I've actually just got a 6-week course starting next week for 8 young people. And these relationships are obviously helping the candidates being accepted into the college because of the relationship we've got with the colleges. They kind of get to know young people and maybe give them a wee foot in the door as well. This year, opportunities for employment within the Fair Share depot are a lot higher than they've been in previous years. So this year we've got 20 Kickstart places at Fair Share, and we've got 4 Community Jobs Scotland. So far we've filled 12 of those Kickstart places. 7 of those were from young people that had came through the employability programmes, and the others were external. We obviously say to the young people that because there may be a Kickstart position or a community job position available, that you're not guaranteed it. You still, it's still open to everybody, and it's the best candidate for the job. But obviously, if they've done 12 weeks work experience with us, they show us what they can actually do. Right, and some of you may have heard me speaking about Fair Share and may not have a lot of knowledge about it. So Fair Share, we're the national organisation. We're the largest food suppliers in the UK. So we're the largest surplus food supplier in the UK. And we're based down at Scotstoun, and we've got a 14,000 foot depot down here. Over the last year, we have put out 6 million meals to people during the pandemic. And what we find is that the young people don't only get the experience of working in a warehouse, but they actually get a lot of, I suppose, happiness out of actually knowing that the work that they're doing is helping out people in their communities. And we actually find that that's a great motivator for them. And our basic attendance is way over 90% for our courses because they love the work that they do. And we find this is a carrot. So sometimes if one of our groups is kind of playing up, then we go, right, you're no doing your work experience tomorrow, you're in the classroom, and then it's like, oh no, we want to do it. Which is great for us because we know that they're really enjoying it, they're enjoying the work experience element with us. And what we find with our work experience element is because our staff are all kind of ex-development workers, or they come from a development work background, they know how to communicate with the young people, they know how to kind of get them to do what we want without bribing them too much, but we try and get them there as well. But what we also have to remember is it's not all about stats for us. Jobs are great when the young people's ready. My chief executive hope might not like to hear this, my director might not like to hear this, but we very much don't push young people into jobs or push them somewhere else just because we need to get an outcome. We are very much kind of centre young person focused on that. I'll take a hit and actually ask a young person to go back the way if we find that's totally appropriate. And also what we found is, especially around about stage 2, the building the confidence and creating friendships. And actually what I wrote there, how to talk to someone over the age of 20 can be a challenge. I didn't think I was that old until you start talking to them. And young people, at times, a lot of them, the 16, 17 year olds, the only kind of people they've really spoken to is either teachers or parents and that. So actually get them to actually speak to somebody in my age bracket on a kind of personal level and just a kind of friendly level can be a challenge for them. And it's actually a skill that they have to develop, and we've actually realised that over a number of years. And actually just setting short-term and long-term goals, personal and professional. So a lot of the stuff that we do is take it away from jobs, take it away from that, going, what do you want to do? Do you want to get your driving licence? Do you want to get, so we'll help with that. Do you want to get your own tenancy? Do you want to get some new friends? Do you want to go to some concerts? Things like that. Just try to get them infused about something. And since we go to difficulties, so trying to engage young people in classroom training can be difficult. We try to make our training as fun and interactive as we possibly can. Right, you may have realised I've not spoke a lot about COVID-19, and the reason for that is we didn't close. We were open all the way through, and we delayed our programmes for a small period of time. We worked very, very closely with Skills Development Scotland, because obviously we're in a working depot, that we had to write a number of different policies around about social distancing, about work bubbles. So we were assessed that we could kind of stay open because we were an essential service. We did bring in some kind of remote learning, but it was blended as much as we could. So we did kind of stay open. What we did find with remote learning is all the young people wanted to do was get back on site, and we're trying to say, no, you need to do this bit first. And similar to what Kirsty was saying, a lot of the stuff that we found problematic roundabout was round about IT. So we bought a lot of laptops, bought a lot of tablets, and got them out to the young people, helped them with data caps, helped them with internet access. We also helped with things like basically a lot of partners were very generous, and we helped us with a lot of like kind of gifts round about, vouchers and things like that they could actually help and get a bit of shopping as well, because we actually realised how hard it was for the young people. And that actually brings me on to mental health. We found that mental health, well, I'm sure everybody has, mental health over the last year has been extremely difficult for obviously young people, staff, everybody. So we have introduced wellbeing groups, and we've had mental health workshops with basically staff, volunteers, young people all throughout the year. And we found this to be quite helpful. Sometimes it could be an hour session and then it lasts a whole day, and then it actually moves on to 2 days. And but it's been quite hard work, but it's been something that's been definitely needed. And still, some of the difficulties that we still have is kind of breaking down the stereotypes around about warehouse work and warehouse workers. The stereotype being that it's only men that do that. But I would say, so out of my current group of 18 young people, 7 of them are female, which is way higher than it used to be historically. And I think we are breaking down these barriers. To be honest, I don't want to stick the boot into one of the guys. All my girl young people, female young people, they're here all here in time, and they're all the hardest workers. And here is a wee success story, so you can really read it back yourself. Young females that was on our programme, and young Rebecca, and just along the bottom is what she's achieved in the last 6 months since being with us. Rebecca, I've obviously asked her permission for me to share this, she had crippling anxiety, basically bursting into tears if you're putting a wee bit of pressure on her. I just had to tell her to get back at the door. Now she's out my depot floor, shouting and bawling at big burly men, telling them what to do. So the changing has been absolutely fantastic, and when we think about success stories, it's not just about has she got a job, it's actually the change in the young person that we find is a success story. So that's me.
Thank you very much, John. That was great and really nice to have a personal experience with you. I'd read it before because you shared it with us, so it's like a good story. We'll hold any questions for John, but what we'll do now is we'll just move on to the presentation from John Halliday, which, Chris, I think you are going to share on our behalf. Thank you very much. It seems to be working.
Hi, I'm John Halliday, Director of
Thank
Development
you.
At Trust. I first want to apologise that none of us have managed to get to the event today. I hope you won't mind and you'll accept this short video instead. The community renewal team were really delighted to be highly commended on our youth project in the east of Edinburgh, which we call the Employment Safety Net. I'm going to briefly introduce the origins of that youth work approach and then talk about how the approach works as we've refined it now in the east of Edinburgh, and then about what we've done more recently in the Bingham area there. We're a charity that works to transform the lives of people of all ages by building relationships first and then gradually working to look at all different aspects of their life, growing their capacity for change and then sticking with people for as long as it takes. We currently focus on just 3 neighbourhoods: Muirhouse in North Edinburgh, Govan Hill in Glasgow, and then Bingham Magdalen, which is this one in the east of Edinburgh. We used to work in 17 neighbourhoods, or we've had projects all over the place, but we've actually focused on a strategy now that says, what if we can demonstrate a whole neighbourhood being lifted out of poverty by integrating long-term support, which is led by the community across all different people and aspects of their lives. So you can imagine that youth work is really core to that, making it so people are supported to improve their own life, but also be really connected to that community, so they don't necessarily want to move away when things do get back on track. So this is exactly what we've been doing in our project that's based in that Bingham office. First, I want to start with this. This is Kevin. It's an old picture because he's part of our origin story. He's 17 here. He and his friends were not interested in work or training. They'd already left school. They were getting into trouble, to be honest. Everything was rubbish to them. They lacked hope for their neighbourhood, their area, hope for themselves and their prospects. They had nothing to do, really. They were hanging around, falling out with local people, disinterested in services that the council or schools or government or charities could give them. They just weren't engaged. Using a community development ethos, we actually managed to get into that group just for a chat about their experience of school, listening to their dislikes, their gripes. The long conversation ended up morphing into a natural, organic chat about their aspirations. We were actually in a lucky position where we were able to pay for some of the social activities that they actually said they wanted to do. Paintball, yeah, sure, let's go. Adventure days, yeah, let's do it. All sorts of fun things that they could do. It was really a surprise to them that they were getting what they wanted. To our delight, they happened to know an elderly couple who needed some gardening, so we set them up for the day and we call it landscaping work experience. Here they are. What other work experience do we want? This meant we could ask, what other work experience do you want? And for whatever reason, they want no first aid. Okay, done, we'll do some first aid training, sure. After a while, this Kevin, he came to us and said, did we know how he could make some money? Of course, great. That was the question we'd been waiting all this time for. Not starting with saying this is an employment programme, just starting with a chat. I'll come back to him, but it's now over a decade later and we've rather codified our approach. The Employment Safety Net. It's a project for disengaged 14 to 24-year-old school leavers, and at this occasion we're doing it around Bingham. They're more often than not care leavers, offenders, young parents, carers, or having mental health issues, although not exclusively. We're there for everyone. We wait for SDS, the schools, the council, and others to use databases, send letters, to fruitlessly find the school leavers and point them towards positive destinations. Of course, it works for some of them, but not the most disengaged, not the hardest to keep interested in what you're doing. So after they kind of give up, about 9 months after you leave school, such efforts kind of tend to cease. And what we do, we describe it as hoovering up every single disengaged person in a whole neighbourhood. People who've been missed by letters or databases. We've actually always found more people than were on the database that we were given. There's people that we've forgotten about and lost. We find them on the street corners. So we do whatever it takes to engage them. It might be a pizza party, it might be turning up to a social event, it might be that there's a party happening and one of our staff can sort of talk their way in. We talk about things they're interested in. We ended up setting up a whole community gym in Bingham and a boxing club because this is the sort of thing that motivated the young people we were meeting. It's actually really productive and ended up with all sorts of outcomes we wouldn't have expected. But it was really just a way of engaging people on their terms. This way of engaging people has been so successful and organic, a community development approach, that we kind of accidentally became the leads in supporting some of the girls and young women at the local Gypsy Traveller site as well. There was sort of a snowballing effect as we gained trust with people. Anyway, the big number is that nearly 100 people have got into work out of these organic conversations that turn into more systematic activities. But critically, we don't only seek these positive destinations. For many people, the positive result might be something outside there that doesn't tick a box on a funding sheet. It's not always just college or work experience. We worked with 11 regular offenders who are in and out of prison, and after 2 years, not all of them have got a job, frankly, but only one had reoffended. You know, you can count the savings to the justice system there. It was clear that the support was making a difference to their life. There's a young mum support group. We formed this just as part of our engagement, but actually what a fantastic impact on the nutrition for those young mums and their babies. The early start that takes was just a sort of side impact of this project, following our nose and finding what works. I'll give another example, Claire's story. She's a care leaver with no fixed address. She was isolated, anxious, bullied. She was estranged from her family and had anger management issues. For her, she prioritised securing a permanent residence, and when she did, she redecorated it, which meant for her she could invite friends over confidently. It was no small feat, but it was a major change for her. This was an important part of her life, that she lacked that particular confidence. We found she was passionate about boxing, so we got her volunteering. We helped her manage her finances. These were building confidence, bit by bit, building confidence in herself. And when she asked, and people do ask after they've gained this kind of confidence, we offered her a work experience placement with a solicitor. And then this turned into a temporary job at a children's charity. Later, as her personal life and anger and drinking and her mental health worsened, we helped her to cope and sustain through that work. And actually with mindful practices, she sort of got a bit more on top of her anxiety. Her job continued to go well. It was actually made permanent. She increased her hours. She had a great classic job outcome, tick the box. But equally importantly, she had a wider social network. She had a stable home and finances. She uses anxiety coping techniques. She's so much more resilient. And what about Kevin from before? Well, he just asked us if we could get him some work, some way of securing some money. And we talked to him about work experience. He wanted an admin post, so we found a work experience admin place for him. And then we must admit we rather lost touch. But brilliantly, he recently got in touch. That's why he's leading. That's why we have a lovely photo of him. Recently got in touch to say thank you and how much we changed his life. And that was brilliant. But also we wanted to say thank you to him because he'd been playing his own small role in sculpting this program and what it's become now a decade later. So at this stage, I'd normally say, does anyone have any questions? I'm sure there's much more we could talk about our engagement methodology, and particularly the bit in the middle. There's a bit of magic that gets you from engagement to a job outcome. It's really just a lot of time, frankly. But we can't ask questions in this format, but I can offer you my contact details. Do get in touch. I can put you in touch with my frontline colleagues, not least Craig, who leads that team. And we look forward to hearing from you. I'm sure some of your projects, there'll be links we could do, learning we could pick up from elsewhere that we could maybe integrate, and you might want to hear about some other aspects of what we do. Anyway, thanks again to SURF for organising this. Hope you have a great session, and thanks very much.
Thank you very much to John. A good example there of, I suppose, particularly with the example used in Bingham of a co-production and working with the young people and the young people determining what they wanted and what they needed, which obviously led to other things for them. So we're now open to questions. If you have any questions, you can either put them in the chat, as Elaine Gibb has already done, or you can raise your hand, which I think is at the bottom of the screen, so that and I'll pick that up and you can come into it. Elaine, do you want to ask your question out loud, seeing as your video has gone on? It's nice to see your face.
Hi there. Yes, I thought I'd better say hello. Hi everyone. I'm Elaine from the William Grant Foundation. My question is just a little bit more about hearing from John, but actually potentially from Street League and Skills Development Scotland too. John, you'd mentioned about Move On becoming trauma informed recently, and I'm really interested just to hear a little bit more about that. What was behind the decision, and can you see any difference in terms of, you know, becoming a trauma-informed service? Can you see a difference in terms of kind of how you support and work with young people, and how are your staff responding to that? But I also wondered whether that's something that Street League or Skills Development Scotland are looking at too.
Over to you, John, if you're still with us. John's connection was obviously
a little bit ropey.
Yeah.
Can you hear me okay now?
I can hear you now, John.
Yeah, sorry, it's the connection in the depot today, it's not great. Yeah, so it was about a year and a half ago, it was through kind of conversation through the senior management team that we had identified becoming trauma-informed would be very beneficial to us. So we have employed a dedicated trauma-informed worker that looks at all our policies and everything that goes with it. So for about the first 3 months, she just looked at basically every policy we've done and then kind of rejigged it and looked at it. And we had spoke to all the staff and they were very much on board with it. And we have seen a big, massive change on actually even just how we actually talk to young people at the very first meeting. Because we're coming from this kind of different viewpoint, that realising even though a lot of our staff are very experienced, like myself, I've been in kind of employability for over 20 years now, but putting that in your head, immediately going that I don't think we ever thought previously that that's the initial thought process that you should have, is think about what maybe has happened to this young person in the past or be even adult in the past. So it's changed the way that we work completely, from paperwork to training to how we hold meetings to, for example, we've just basically I've just wrote a volunteer strategic document, and that whole document is very much dictated on the new trauma-informed way that we're working. So it's had a big, massive change in how we work, and even like a lot of your volunteers have bought into it, and they are actually it's actually helped us communicate better with them and actually be able to deal with some of the issues that probably they didn't feel that open to speaking to us about previously. So we have been doing kind of mental health workshops. Basically, it was weekly for a point there. The volunteers, the young people, everybody knows now that we're here to support more than we probably previous have. So yeah, it's had a big, massive impact on us.
Thanks very much, John. Kirsty, do you have anything from your perspective at Street League?
Yeah, from a organisation employer perspective, we with reference to the wellbeing log, that really flagged a volume of new issues for us that maybe we hadn't seen before. So, you know, the welfare vouchers, you know, giving young people supermarket vouchers, that, you know, was something that we hadn't done before. So it actually was the board that looked at the wellbeing log and were like, we need to make sure our staff are having that training. So all our staff have now had suicide awareness training. They've all had mental health training. They have that, but we made sure that we did like an overhaul just to make sure that everyone had an up-to-date version. We've expanded our safeguarding team in-house as well. So we've added 3 new members across the organisation, and that just for another angle. So we're always looking at every part of the young person journey. Within the support and supervision document that we have with our staff as well, we're having a point on it where we talk about them dealing with and navigating our young people through these things, because we absolutely appreciate that this is more maybe than it has been before, and it's a big job for our, you know, our team to be able to support that, and then as well, like with our partners, making sure that we know exactly, like we know that we're not mental health professionals, you know, we're an employability organisation and very much trying to stay in that lane, but making sure we know across Scotland the support that is available and making sure these young people are signposted. Our wellbeing logs stay open, like until we know that that person has then received the support, and we've done that follow-up as well, so it doesn't just land on us and then be forgotten about as well. So in terms of wellbeing for our young people, we do the SQA Wellbeing Award, which again is usually quite thematic based on if it's Christmas. You know, maybe 2 years ago it was, you know, thinking about indulgence and, you know, thinking about things over that Christmas period, whereas in COVID it was very much about thinking about your surroundings, your health, your well-being, and just making sure that that wasn't lost with young people as well. So and then in terms of the digital engagement, all our staff were also went through the NSPCC online safety training. Again, just for any flags or signposting that might have come up, we just wanted to make sure our staff were covered. And hands up, you know, these were things that we maybe didn't have a thought about, you know, in March last year, but very quickly realised that it was something we needed to roll out across our 6 regions. So, yeah.
That's right. I think that one of the points that you made there, Christy, because I think most employers are thinking about well-being of the audiences they engage with, but they're not necessarily mental health. They're not mental health professionals themselves. That's staying in your lane, but being aware, and so that you can point people in the direction for appropriate help is something that I think is really important, because I suppose we're probably all aware of people who are under stress themselves in delivering a job and taking on other responsibilities can be taxing. Elaine, do you have any comments on the trauma-informed aspect of the questions?
Yeah, very much.
Sorry, I thought you were asking.
No, sorry. Yeah, I realized as I said Elaine, there's 2. I meant Elaine Walls.
Yeah, from SDS here. So I'm obviously just about to do a bit of a presentation, but our careers advice and guidance, they do quite a lot of trauma-informed thinking. I have to say there's quite a lot of new thinking going on in SDS right now. We are obviously just having post-response to COVID, there has been quite a lot of reconsideration of the way that we are looking at what we're doing. I'm going to talk quite a bit about careers advice in my presentation, so I'll try and keep this very short and just to basically say, yeah, very much we are looking at bringing the voice of the individual into the way that we're working in SDS. And looking to really expand on that. We're at the start of basically a 5-year programme across the entire business. You obviously bearing in mind SDS is a little bit of a super tanker. It's a huge organisation with a lot of fingers in a lot of different activities. So I think it's quite a big, slow job for us to do properly, but it's very much at the heart of the way that our careers advisors and those teams that are managing that and the interaction that they're doing is very much about trauma-informed practice and making sure that the practice is personalised and is not just a kind of a rigid template. So I think in line with what everybody else is talking about, I think COVID has really highlighted the need to bring that kind of practice to the fore. So yeah, in short, we are very much building that into our work.
Okay, thanks very much, Elaine. Heather Reid has posted another question around sourcing of placements for I suppose John, you touched on it a bit about the fact that you can source placements within the organisation and within FareShare. Have you had more difficulty in finding placements over the past year or not from either of you?
I'll go. Yeah, no, we, in terms of automatic work placements, we paused that for the sake of not knowing fully if that employer was able to adhere to the health and safety of COVID guidelines. We had a COVID risk assessment that we did, but they were work trials that we made sure. So we needed to make sure that there was like certainty of the young person, securing that employment, and we also made sure that there was like a existing relationship with the employer, that we knew what that young person was going into, just to be like safe with that, because we understood that at so many different points in the year it was like unpredictable, and if we weren't able to safely say what that young person's exposure would be, we just made sure that we didn't. But we did say yes to work trials, and again there needed to be a risk assessment followed up just to say that we were confident about that. So we look to obviously commence work placements, given that they're so important with this new wave of programmes beginning, but the same caution will apply.
Okay, thanks very much. John, do you have anything to add to that?
Obviously, as I mentioned earlier, our primary work placements in Glasgow is at Fairshare. We have got employability through in Edinburgh as well, but we also have our own social enterprise through in Edinburgh, a wood recycling project through there. So our placements are generally internally. Historically, we have went external for placements, but similar to Kirsty, over the last year, we kind of didn't want to take the chance of, it was a massive rigmarole having to do the risk assessments off-site. What we actually found this year is we actually reduced our volunteers so we could make sure that we were accommodating as many young people on site as possible and keeping them as safe as possible. Even though our workload was 5 times what it was the year before. So we very much work to work bubbles, and it just goes, and what we actually found this year, so twice this year we actually had to shut down the EF groups because of a positive COVID case. It was young people outside. We've actually not had a positive case in the depot, but we've had young people actually phoning up going, oh, I was out at the weekend, and then they'd phone in Monday and say, I'm not feeling too well, and we go, well, don't come in. And they go, oh, I've tested positive, and we'd actually shut the full group down, even though we knew it was happening at the weekend, but we just went, we're not taking any chances. Full group shut down for 2 weeks. So we were, I can totally understand what Kirsty's saying. It was trying to make sure the young people were as safe as possible, because let's be honest, they were the super spreaders. So trying to do work placements off-site would have been very, very difficult.
Okay. Can I ask, before we move on to Elaine's presentation, I had one question, because all 3 of the presentations talked about, I think John Halliday actually used the checkbox of getting someone into a job or into a position or into training. But you all talked about all the other stuff that was achieved around confidence building, making friends, things that, you know, some people might describe as the soft outcomes. And I suppose my question is, how do you capture in your reporting mechanism how many, and I suppose some of the stats that you've all shared about people going into training or people going to jobs, which are excellent, but the other side of it about gaining confidence, how do you manage to capture that in a, I mean, because you've done it with stories, and do you capture it in any other way?
Yeah, no, I can go with this. So we kind of use a kind of a similar to a Richter scale. I don't know if anybody's used that historically, a Richter scale, which is basically when the young people start, we'll ask them a series of questions of how they feel, and as they progress through the courses, we'll then review these questions, and we then have a recording system, which we're changing very shortly to hopefully a more user-friendly one, but we have a recording system and it actually shows how they've improved. But what we actually do find at times, it's also when you capture that young person. So you may have a young person that is saying, oh, how do you feel, how's your confidence speaking to your peer group or making friends, and they might be an 8, they might say an 8 at the start, and then you catch them on a bad day and they're back down at a 4. So it's very important that you do it as often as possible, because as you know, it's like even when you do your staff reviews, you may get a staff review and everybody's had a really hard week, and you do a staff review and everybody says, oh, I hate work, I don't want to be here. Whereas if you go to it the following week, they'd all say, I love it. So we found it's very important that you do it as often as possible to capture this information. Okay, thanks very much, John. Kirsty, do you have any?
Yeah, so we, pre-COVID, we had a young person's forum. So we would go out to the academy and we would have an interactive, feedback session. And honestly, we found that it was maybe a bit of lip service. Yeah, Street League's great, blah, blah, blah. And we collated that in and we thought, right, but we knew, and it wasn't, maybe they were just maybe doing it because we were there with them. And then because of lockdown, we ended up putting it on a Google Forms. We had questionnaires just going out, and we found the response was overwhelming because it was on their phone. They were sitting at night and they were just able to fill out 8 questions, and they were really, really honest, and they were honest about themselves, they were honest about their fears, they were honest about how they feel they've come on, and we were able to capture that. We saw that how they had done, and what it's made us do is realise that we're piloting a framework called Skills Builder. It's used quite a lot down in England, and it's basically a framework which is over 8 skills, which sort of are overarching for what successful young people, so team building, aiming positive, thinking, and we're piloting that to try and weave that into our practice framework now, because we feel, exactly as John's saying, like having this framework will be really useful for us. But up until that point, we were doing like the feedback surveys, the forums, just to hear directly from the young people.
Thanks very much. I have to say, it's been an awful year. However, it's heartening to hear there are learning things that have come out of it that have improved reporting and changed practice. So congratulations to both of you and to John Halliday, who's not here, but for overcoming some of these obstacles, but also using them as learning opportunities. This award, and today, is obviously sponsored by Scottish Government and Skills Development Scotland. And our next speaker is Elaine Walls, who you've already heard from a little bit, from Skills Development Scotland, to tell us what's on their agenda. So over to you, Elaine.
Thank you very much. I shall just share my screen. Takes me a little minute, you'll have to excuse me. I'm working off my tablet. Is it there now?
Yes, it's there now. Well done.
Yes, I'm working off my tablet, not my laptop, because SDS laptops are locked down and Zoom's not considered secure enough for us to use Zoom. So it's all quite exciting trying to share PowerPoint. So Skills Development Scotland, I think you probably all know about. We are a really quite large and pivotal body, I personally believe, in the skills and employment landscape. Because Skills Development Scotland faces in 2 directions, I've always referred to it as a bit of a 2-headed monster, which is possibly not the most flattering analogy. But we face towards what some people in the system call the supply of talent, but we also face towards what they call the demand for talent. So we're looking in and working with young people, but also adults, people who want to change careers, people who are looking for further information about different types of careers, regardless of their age and stage. And we are working in that direction, and therefore getting quite a good input on what's going on in that field. But we work quite closely, in fact, very closely, with employers representative groups, and the kind of strategic work that goes on around planning employment and our economy as well. So we've got quite a large reach for what we do. So although we've got a lot of people in the organisation, we are spread pretty wide. So this is where it becomes exciting, and I work out which way we go with the slides. What I thought I would talk to you today about, we're in a situation with employability, which I'm sure most of you are aware of, that the employability delivery nationally is changing. Up until now, SDS has had we've supported and funded through the Scottish Government, or for the Scottish Government, we've had the Employability Fund, which is obviously mainly stage 2 to 4 work. That's obviously moving towards the No One Left Behind and the various programmes that are emerging, Young Person's Guarantee and so on. All the other different things. It's quite a different landscape that is emerging. SDS is not deciding the outcomes of those. We are participants in this in the same way as training providers are, third sector, as well as Scottish Government and of course local authorities. So I thought what I would do was explain a little bit about how we are approaching our wider approach. We've got quite a few different areas that we're thinking about. Our wider offer, our careers work, which I think is worth us fleshing out a little bit here, and also a little bit about our strategy for what we're doing in terms of equality, diversity and inclusion, because I think it's really ever more than has ever been the case before. I think it's really pertinent now to the employability, and we've really shaped it. And you're talking about trauma informed. It's not necessarily directly trauma informed, but it's certainly evidence based. That we're now looking our equality strategy. It's an internal equality strategy, but it's about how we are interacting with the outside world So that's what this slide here is about. You can see that our outcome, our number one outcome, we have 5 in total, is about people with lived experience of poverty. So I know that obviously, you know, we were talking about the Community Renewal Trust, we're talking about going into areas of severe deprivation like Muirhouse and so on. We are looking at the impact that poverty has on communities and has on individual people, and starting to really address the barriers that poverty causes, but also the barriers that cause poverty as well. So we're really looking at that in a very wide sense, and that's actually directly where my own particular role is, but it's affecting our careers advice practice as well. But it's also about looking at how we can influence employers. So for example, concept like fair work and so on, and looking at living wage and that influencing piece that we're trying to do in there. And so that's really quite important, particularly when we're talking about employability and helping groups of people and communities to come out of poverty and to try and get them into a situation where they're actually earning fair money or having a fair working environment. Just a couple of other outcomes that I thought I would just highlight. We are commissioned obviously by the Scottish Government, and apprenticeships are one of our main priorities, along with careers advice and guidance. And so women and girls are very underrepresented in the apprenticeship field, and so we have a particular focus on making sure that we can sustain that. So moving from employability potentially into employment or training, that's something that we are really keen to develop, the links between employability training and apprenticeships. It's something that really has a lot of potential for growth. And also that bit there I was talking about a little bit earlier in the response to the trauma-informed question, it's been built in for the first time, along with outcome 1 for the first time, that the lived experience of people with protected characteristics, that their lived experience is a fundamental component of the design of our services, and that's including careers advice and guidance, but also looking at our apprenticeships and also making sure that we're able to get a more diverse group of people accessing apprenticeships, but also our work with employers to influence employers in the way that they are responding. So there's quite a lot of work going on there in terms of our employability. That's not necessarily about the delivery of training programs, but is actually looking to expand our role and see where we can fit in. And partly maybe when we come to a discussion later on about maybe thinking about what the landscape is like and where the gaps are in provision, the gaps are in support. Our employability activities specifically, obviously we are still delivering the Employability Fund, which is available across all local authorities at present. You will be aware that that is being discussed, and the transition is well underway now. Other employability strands that we've got, we maintain NTTF, as we call it, and we expanded it during COVID to include individuals aged over 25. So that maybe doesn't particularly work for the young people who've been discussed in the 3 projects so far, but certainly within communities, we're making sure that we're addressing those gaps in the landscape. We are involved very closely in the Green Jobs Academy, and again looking at the future for young people and people in employability pathways. Those green jobs represent a very wide range of sectors, from renewable energy all the way through to technological advances, as well as a lot of STEM and agricultural work as well. So there's a whole bunch of things. In fact, I would suspect that Move On is probably able to sit underneath the green jobs as well, given that it is looking at recycling food. So we're looking at that as well. And another thing that we brought in, you may be familiar with our foundation apprenticeship programme, which is a skills-based learning opportunity within schools. We actually remodeled that a little bit for post-school leavers so that they were able to get a skills-based pathway that might work for them. That was a temporary COVID response, however. Obviously, during No One Left Behind, looking at that, our careers advice, information and guidance team are going to have a really key role, and I'm going to come on to that just in a minute. So I've missed one out. You're not getting to see I'm going to have to come back to that. Sorry, I've got another slide that hasn't shown up here. So the careers information, advice and guidance, you'll notice that we don't call it careers advisors because the careers advisor's role is not to tell a young person what their job should be. That is absolutely not what careers advisors do. They may have done it in the past, but for quite a long time now, we do not do that. We support people on a career journey. And you may notice if we start at the bottom of this slide and work up the way, we are actually beginning to work now into primary schools, so primary 7, because we've now worked out, again, it's that lived experience informed practice. We're well aware that young people make career decisions right back into primary school when they're very, very young sometimes. Also, they're more often going into secondary school not having a clue about the world of work at all. And so we're starting to build that intervention into primary schools so that we can start to shape young people's thinking as they go into school. Then when they get to S2, S3 and they start to think about subject choices, we're able to allow them to think more constructively about where they might want to go. We're also encouraging schools, quite a few schools now starting to think about their subject choice phase not being about subject choice, it's about being career pathways. There's some really good examples. For example, up in Dundee, Grove Academy have created a booklet now that is about their career pathways and the kind of subjects or qualifications or courses, not just narrow subjects within school, that you might want to take in order to progress a career. Then moving into senior phase, there's a more intensive support. Now that intensive support is not for every pupil. What we do is we tend to look at the needs of young people. So for example, if you're care experienced, you're automatically, no matter your situation, no matter your personal circumstances, a care experienced young person will automatically be entitled to a higher level of input from a careers support person than somebody who is sailing along quite happily. Mum and dad are, are supporting everything that they're doing. So we will make sure that care experienced person gets that extra support. And we also look at references from school and take their guidance. I think it's really important for me to address a small point that was made by Community Renewal Trust. They talked about SDS and other organisations stopping engaging with young people. It's really, I think, important for everybody to understand SDS doesn't own the data about young people, and therefore if a young person drops out of the school system data is not SDS's data, and we don't have access to it unless the school give it to us. So if somebody drops out of the school system, we have no knowledge of that. It's not SDS giving up on that young person, and I'd really like to make that quite clear. What we have got is a data sharing agreement. I'm going to come on to that. That's the slide that disappeared. I'm going to come on to that later on. Just to also say to you about post-school extended support, what we do is we make sure, particularly those young people who are getting extra support from us, that a warm handover is given to their next stage. That, of course, assumes that there is a positive destination, and that very often would be college or an apprenticeship or training in that kind of supported way. So it allows us to support some groups for longer. Again, that is predicated on us knowing about that young person and having the data and permission to engage with them. One of the things that we focus really clearly on is the career education standard. And again, from an employability point of view, I think it's really important that I clarify this and just sort of illuminate this. The career education standard is it's a direction of travel that young people can go towards and work towards, and it's being implemented and rolled out in schools where we are engaging with guidance teachers and the sort of social education type classes to allow young people to start considering their futures. So it's about thinking about networking, it's about thinking about preparing a CV, it's about thinking about the skills that you've got and the attributes you've got before you start to think about the kind of career that you might want. Also thinking about what you like and dislike about working in school, or the sort of things that you like or dislike out of school as well, and helping people to start to form a thought about what their career might be. And that is catching groups so that they are not leaving school with no clue what to do, which obviously, as we all know, risks them ending up not in a positive destination and not in education or training or work. So it's about intervening earlier on, and that's to start to develop the employability, again, predicated on the fact that those young people that we're dealing with must be in school, and so it's not necessarily going to help those who are dropping out. However, it is important to understand that we have a post-school offer as well. One of the things that the Careers Service have asked me to relay to you is that at a local level, careers advisors work both nationally and locally. At a local level, the teams engage with training providers and third sector organisations as well as employers to try and build as much support as possible for young people who are in vulnerable situations. Again, we have to know that they're there. However, one of the things that we don't do is we don't have the resource, the capacity or the staff to go into communities the way that the likes of Community Renewal Trust do, or to engage with people like Street League and Move On are able to do. We don't have that kind of intensive capacity, but that means that we are not stepping on the toes of those of you who are able to go out and work intensively with young people. What Skills Development Scotland can do, however, is support the work that you're doing. So they are more than happy to work on a drop-in basis. Now, I've had offers from some of the area managers in Skills Development Scotland saying that they would be delighted to send a careers advisor to drop in to the work that you're doing, to work and support young people with their career education standard, with their career management planning. Having heard quite a lot of really good career management planning going on from the presentations that have been done today, but it's an offer that is there. It's not a chargeable offer. We're not a profit-making service, and it's not about taking money. It's actually being in there, and that gap that Community Renewal Trust mentioned, where we're not there. Well, we're there. If you've got the young people, we're there to support them. So that offer is very much there for everybody. Just very quickly, just to give you an idea of the sort of things that we're doing in the career management, is thinking about the young person and their self, who they are, what they think about themselves, thinking about their strength, helping them to identify that they have strengths, because as we all know, a lot of them, and we've heard quite a lot, particularly listening to that case study about the girl in Move On and her anxiety and all the rest of it, helping people to understand that they do have strengths, who they're talking to, who their network might be, and then thinking about what their horizons might be. And I think the horizons are the bit that we're maybe most associated with, but really it's that rounded picture that we're looking for. So that is something that we are looking at in terms of supporting young people to develop their employability skills. I'm going to just flick forward and see if I've got that other slide. Yes, I do. Here it is here. One of the other things that we're doing, and it goes in tandem with the offer that I've just made, is we have a thing called the 16+ Data Hub. Now, we don't own it, but it is we're using the customer support system, our CSS system, as a kind of a foundation for it. But again, this is not data that we own. We are reliant on all of these organisations, and you can see who they are, putting data in. And actually, there is supposed to be on this slide, which is not playing for me at all today, there is supposed to be an area where third sector are involved as well. We've been working through TCEF and through third sector employability providers to actually allow that sharing of data to come in. And the good thing about that is that joins up that bit that was being said by the Community Renewal Trust about where everybody goes. Everybody only is able to engage if we can all see the data. So if somebody's disappeared and we don't know where they've gone, if you've got that person and we are able to work with them, then that allows the structure to come round them and to work with them better. It's maybe one of the areas that could be up for discussion and exploring. But that data hub is there. Third sector organisations are signing up and thinking about their representatives are working very closely with SDS and the other organisations to think about how data can be shared securely and safely and appropriately to allow us to work in a more collaborative way together to reach those young people who are most at risk. And then finally, just another little thing for information. This is a general slide that was created by the Careers Service for us. And they do talk about all the different routes. But if you're thinking about the kind of helping people in employability training to move into, for example, employment or apprenticeships, it's worth knowing about the kind of extra funding that is there. If you've got a young person who is from particular protected characteristic groups, there is enhanced funding for them moving in and that extra support as well as job start payments and other kinds of payments that are available as well. So if your organisation is not particularly aware of the kind of extra funding that can be put in place for apprenticeships or for employment, then it's worth getting in touch with us to find out a bit about that, because we have some funds that we run that allow that extra support, even if it's reasonable adjustments or access to work, whatever it is, we're maybe able to support out with that. And it's just an offer that is there for everybody. So basically that's me. I think I've covered everything I can. Oh, there it is. There, it's disappeared. The third sector people, somebody's put in a fancy wee visual. But it's a number of offers around employability, wider than employability funds now. So we're really interested to engage with you to see how we can work with you in a joined up way to support that employability journey for young people. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Elaine. That was great, and I think today's event is a good example of the purpose of SURF in bringing strategic organisations such as SDS and grassroots organisations, as our previous three speakers together, to look at what they can offer each other. I suppose on reflection, my career advice at school was either a hairdresser or a museum curator, and neither of those things. I'm not sure. I think at the time it was something called Jig Cal. It was a tick box exercise that you filled in back in the 80s. Does anyone have any questions for Elaine, or any observations around maybe needs that should exist at a national level that would help more direct community work in overcoming employability barriers? Because I think, Elaine, you've given a very good offer there of the fact that you don't have, I mean, I was struck by John Halliday's comments on the fact that they are there for people who aren't in any database. And my thought at the time in hearing that was, if they're not in a database, that makes larger organizations, it is much more difficult for you to reach those, but you're dependent on community group, people who are working actually in the community, to then provide you with the means to offer that support.
Absolutely, and we're there to offer that support. It's not there, we're not there to redirect young people into programs away from employability. Employability, you know, we passionately believe in employability fund, and we passionately believe in that staged approach that's been demonstrated by these groups that have presented today. And it's why we've had such an engagement sponsoring this particular award, because it really is, it's such an important part for the most vulnerable customers. Unfortunately, we don't have access to data on them unless we are given it. So I think it's really important that we're able to work in a collaborative way to join up and to work out the best way to support those young people.
It also highlights the importance of place-based working, and it is only people who are working in a place that will realise that there are people that are coming to contact people who we may say fall into the gaps where that have not been given the opportunities that other people are having. So you are dependent as an organisation on those grassroots organisations. Thank you very much for that, Elaine. As I said, this is a good example of, I suppose, what drew me to apply for a job at SURF. I should confess at this point that my knowledge of biased employment is probably where I'm weakest in my engagement with SURF. Regeneration, housing, etc. I have experience from that in the previous aspects of my career. So this particular award within the SURF system is the one that I know the least about, but have also enjoyed tremendously hearing about it. And having been a SURF judge in the past, I have engaged with it as an agenda. So it's really great to hear from Kirsty, John, and the other John Halliday this morning. Adam is asking if the slide deck can be shared after the event. That can be shared, yes. The whole event is being recorded, which we will put on our YouTube. You'll be shared that link, but separately we can send you the presentations as well, which I think, Elaine, you're happy with your presentation being shared, and Kirsty and John, I'm hoping, are happy with their presentations being shared as well. So thank you very much. Is that okay, Kirsty? Yep. So thank you very much for what you shared with us this morning. Elaine, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, just very quickly, it didn't really fit into the presentation very well, but I just wanted to talk a little bit about very briefly about the award. One of the things that we really were struck by during the judging process was I mean, there was a lot of really creative, you've heard about the really creative approaches, and they've all built into their presentations today about stuff that they did and the kind of impact that they had. Just to kind of emphasize that what really hit home with the judges was those organizations where they were able to demonstrate a real legacy, because I think, you know, we can all run around helping individuals, but I think what added the value was really that legacy and the impact. So if you are applying for the SURF Award for the employability, it's just a little step for a hint that your legacy and the kind of outcomes that you're achieving really do, they carry a lot of weight. So if you're able to demonstrate that or explain that, that's a really good hint.
Thanks very much, Elaine. So if anybody, it's a tip from a judge. If anybody else is thinking of applying for the awards this year, then that's something to bear in mind. One reflection I would have is, John, on what you said, particularly around the young people's, I suppose it was value-based employment was something that they were particularly interested in. I think that's actually come out with the changing nature of employment across the board, everywhere, and careers being long-term careers actually being more challenging, and gig economy, etc. A lot of discussion around young people in general, their desire for value-based jobs, and what Fair Share does tapping into that, to me, was a really interesting element of it. And it picks up other things that are currently being discussed, I suppose, around a well-being economy and things such as that, where people are doing work that they feel is valuable to society. So thank you very much for your contribution this morning. I'm now going to hand over to Emma to briefly do a quick advert for some events and things coming up for SURF.
So I will be brief because I know it's getting near lunchtime. So I'll just share my screen. So as has been mentioned just there about the awards, and this year's awards actually launched on the 3rd of June. You can see our image this year is a bear, and it's about the kind of feeling of the world coming out of hibernation and how things have changed and kind of building back better going forward. The closing date for the applications is an important one and hits 5 p.m. on Monday the 6th of September. The 5 categories remain the same as last year, and again, the supporting youth employability category is in there, and it continues to be supported by Skills Development Scotland. You can see that the other 4 categories there as well. The annual awards dinner is set, hopefully this year, to be in the Grand Central Hotel on the 9th of December. So we've got everything crossed that we will be back together, and last year's projects do get an invite back to that one. So all the information on the awards is at the link there. I'll share that in the chat bar as well. So just a quick plug for SURF membership. If you're not already a SURF member, it is reasonably priced. It's £50 for an organisation or £20 for a community group or individual. It's a free way to promote your organisation. We'll add stuff to our website and social media and e-bulletins. You get pre-booking on events like the annual conference. You would get a week's free booking, and some of these book out quite quickly, especially if they're online with reduced numbers, and you get to input into kind of consultation responses and things that SURF are putting in. So again, there's information on there on the SURF website under the Join SURF section, or if you are interested in membership or have got some more questions, you can drop me an email. And just lastly, just about some other events that we've come up. So this is the first in the series of shared learning workshops set during the holiday period. We have another 3. So next week we've got one that focuses on housing. The following week we have one on place-based regeneration, and then on the 29th we've got one based on the Creative Regeneration Award. The SURF Annual Conference that I briefly mentioned is coming up as well, and the overarching theme is Partners in Place. That's broken down into 3 sessions across the 24th, 25th and 26th of August. They are just 90-minute sessions. The first one focuses on post-COVID recovery, and we've got the new Minister for Community Wealth Building and Planning, Tom Arthur, in there, along with some case study examples and Foundation Scotland. On the 25th, we're focusing primarily on place-based regeneration, and we've got some funders in there like Creative Scotland and Cora and the Robertson Trust to kind of give an overview of funding going ahead, as well as giving examples of their place-based programmes of work. And then finally on the 26th, we're focusing on climate change, and we have academic Fraser Stewart, who has a kind of interest in the kind of grassroots voice being involved in the climate change discussion. And we're also ending that session with poet Joe Gilbert giving an overview of all 3 sessions, so that should be quite interesting. And then, as I mentioned, the SURF Awards dinner on the 9th of December. All of this information is on, apart from the dinner, because it's not open at the moment, is on the SURF website under events, or you can drop me an email and I can send you over programmes or any information. Thank you, that's me.
Thanks very much, Emma. So I think it's now 12 o'clock. We said we would finish at noon. And so it just leaves me to thank those who have joined us today. It's a small but intimate group with good questions. Thank you very much for those that submitted questions. And just a final thank you very much to Kirsty, John Halliday, who's not here, and Elaine. And a thank you to our sponsors, the Scottish Government and Skills Development Scotland. And I hope everyone has a good lunch and a good afternoon. Thank you.